This chapter is done in almost a montage-like fashion that takes place over 3 months, and it shows us the progress Toriko is making, as well as Kamasu.
Torico, Gourmet number 96, Race to Recovery.
Well, hello, my brothers and sisters and people who are trying to get an appendage regrown, folks of the Nerd Nation. I, as always, am Jim, here to bring you another review on the awesome and appetizing and really just well-developed, well-realized tale of Toriko. Now, our last chapter, of course, saw us with really the shocker coming at the end. Yasaku had pretty much all but healed up and kind of fulfilled everybody else's healing wish list requests, but he told Toriko at the end of the chapter that he could help him to regrow a new arm or restore his arm. However, it would take 20 years. At the same time, we wound up going and seeing that Granny Setsuno, who had left Kamasu to his own devices and taken him back to his kitchen to be able to create the century soup or recreate the century soup, she said that it should take him 20 years to create it. So that was the kind of whole theme at the end, and the kind of like, what, 20 years? So this chapter, that's where the chapter leaves off. This chapter actually picks up over here, and the chapter is entitled 20 Years! And we wind up going back and forth, mainly between Toriko and what's going on with him and Yasaku in the Country of Healing, and Kamasu and his attempt at preparing and coming up with the Century Soup. So as the chapter winds up going back and forth, really, you know, the important part to think about here is that they're trying to go and kind of do almost like a montage of a time lapse, because by the end of the chapter it says that a few months have passed and this and that. Toriko, though, we'll start out with him. He winds up talking to Yasaku, and Yasaku, we find out first of all that Takamaru and Match they went away. Takamaru had to go back and get his horse and had to go back to his people, and Match had to do the same, and that they're both basically eagerly awaiting on the Century Soup and this and that. But what wound up happening is Sunny and Teppei were sent out by Yasaku to just get a shit ton of food. And, excuse me, and they don't know why at first, right? We wind up finding out that Yasaku goes and explains to Toriko, and it's actually cool because all this fictional stuff, it actually makes sense the way it's explained, and I like that. Fiction, I mean, is obviously something that you can create out of your mind, so you can create anything, you know? But if you don't have a good solid reasoning on why or how that was created, it makes it feel empty. And they do such a good job in here of making it feel full and not like it's empty because of having these great detailed explanations. So anyway, he talks to Toriko and he says, listen, if I had first of all, the great thing about gourmet cells is that they're incredible at regenerating, okay? So, if I had your actual arm, I could have that thing attached and no problem in a few minutes. It'd be no big deal, right? But since you don't, I can't do it. And then here's the thing about gourmet cells. Normally, we'd be able to go and take like another person's arm, like a donor, you know, just like we have kidney donors, things like that, heart transplants from donors. There's people that can actually go and put on their donor card for various appendages, I guess, and body parts, right? So again, something that's kind of partially rooted in reality, but obviously it's fictional because we don't have people going and buying and selling arms and legs in the black market, at least as far as I know, right? So not my crowd that I hang out with either way, so I guess I wouldn't know. But we find out that, Yasaku says, so basically getting you like another arm and then kind of grafting it on or however he would do it, that's not an option either because gourmet cells, especially the ones that tend to be like better gourmet cells, those ones tend to be very picky about what's, going to go on. So basically it'll reject the attachment, right, if we try to attach another person's appendage to you. So our only option is to actually regrow one from nothing, right, which will take 20 years. So he goes and he takes this cool regeneration seed, and he's like, first we need some of your DNA. So he snips a bunch of Toriko's hair and throws it in a bowl and with this thing, and he's like, now if there's enough of your DNA in there, what'll happen is this regeneration seed will kind of start to sprout and then eventually bloom. And the thing about this is that it winds up happening very quickly. The thing sprouts and Toriko's excited, then it kind of blooms, he's, whoa, you know. And he says, calm down there, fella, that's just step one, you know. That's what Yasaku's telling him in his gravelly voice that I think that he has. And he goes and he winds up saying, he says, listen, he says, the thing about this is that this now has an exact copy of your DNA in there, so if I can take the seed, the little budling, the bud or whatever that's in the middle here, this thing's as fragile as a bubble, if I can get this bad boy and actually, get it into your arm and whatnot, it should help to start regenerating and growing that portion of your arm, right? So it's very comical to this portion of the chapter, because as he goes and pulls the seed out, he's like, telling him how careful he's got to be with it, and he's like, achoo! And he winds up fucking it up. And they gotta do it again. And Toriko's like, and so they go to do it again and mix DNA. And Toriko's like, there must not be enough DNA. It's not going, you know. And Yusaku goes, take off some of your skin. Cut your ball hair. I'm just laughing my ass off, going, oh my god, he just told him to cut off his ball hair and peel back some of his skin. Anyway, they wind up going and actually getting to implant this this little bud, this bubble, this part of this regeneration seed, this you know, if you will, and it almost immediately goes. And it's funny because he tells Toriko, he says, the thing about it that you have to do is that you have to constantly keep eating. You have to be able to feed this thing, and you have to feed it enough, because if you don't feed it enough, what'll happen is that it can actually overtake your body and kill you, because it just winds up feeding off all the food. So almost immediately, Toriko goes and just like shrivels up to like this withered out, like looks like looks like when Sir Crocodile from One Piece would go and grab somebody and kind of suck all the water out of them, and they were just sort of like this, just sort of bones and nothing else, you know. That's what it looks like. It looks like this like mummified corpse that just hasn't been wrapped yet, right? Anyway, it's real funny because then Toriko goes and he's just like, oh man, he's eating to try to keep up with this thing, you know. The neat thing is that Yusaku says, because a bud immediately sprouts from his arm, like, you know, like a little nub, I guess, to what you would say, for the arm to start regrowing. And he says, listen, you're lucky. This normally takes a year to happen, right? So obviously all that stuff is good, and we know that Toriko and his gourmet cells obviously are pretty highly evolved, and as far as we know anyway, or we assume are pretty strong. But really his whole thing and his whole portion of this chapter, and again it goes back and forth, but rather than go, okay, and now Kamasu, and now Toriko, now there's 2 pages with Kamasu, I'm just going through what happened with Toriko. So basically that's where things wind up, you know, leaving off with Toriko. He's just going, and it's just comical the way it is, because every time he goes and starts to like, just like the life starts to suck out of him, then they go and they're sending, you know, Sunny in to pay out for more food, you know, and obviously he's got to just keep continually eating, and I think that his 20-year timetable, just because it's Toriko, will probably be moved up to, you know, 20 days or 20 months, or who knows what it'll wind up being. But we know that a few months wind up passing. And then we go to Kamasu, and Kamasu is basically, I wouldn't say that it's boring, but it's the less interesting part of the chapter when it goes back and forth to him, because he's trying desperately to come up with this century soup, and he's finding out he's running into a wall, and then he's running into a wall, and he just winds up that he keeps getting stopped at every turn and starts to lose some of his confidence. Now we know Kamatsu's not a person who's super just like brooding with confidence anyway, right? He's not exploding with confidence as it is. But his little penguin buddy winds up coming in, and I think for some reason, I feel like the penguin's going to be the key to somehow recreating the century soup. I don't know. I don't know if it's going to give him inspiration or somehow give him an idea or what, but it seems like there's this connection with the penguin, and maybe it'll just keep him in good enough spirits to not give up, so he'll eventually push forward. But the whole deal with him is that as he's working on it and trying to create something, he goes and he tries to pinpoint the differences between Granny Setsuno's kind of modern-day century soup that she was preparing and that she was creating, as opposed to what he actually tried of the actual century soup. And his goal is to make an amalgamation between the two, to make something that has all the flavor and robust taste and everything of the century soup, but to do it with modern ingredients, right? To make it kind of like this century's century soup, and to be known for this, you know? And they talk about how chefs used to patent their, you know, their recipes and things like that, you know? And he goes, the reason that Granny Setsuno, you know, she wanted to do this as kind of an homage to the century soup, but the reason she never patented anything with it is because she felt like it wasn't complete, which we know, obviously. It was missing an ingredient, and that's why she sent Toriko and Kamasu and everybody, you know, that she did send over into Ice Hell, and that's why we experienced that whole arc as we did. So it was a very cool chapter. Again, though, you know, not a ton going on as far as any type of action, but the comic relief with Toriko I thought was hilarious. And as we're going and we're getting towards, we only have a couple chapters, 1 or 2 left here, and then we're going to be winding down volume 11 and what have you. And like I said, it was just, everything's done very well, but we find out at the end over here, it says that, let's see here, thank you, Sean, blah, 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 this and that, alright. I think I was actually, did I might have even flipped to the wrong chapter. Anyways, but at the end it winds up telling us that a few months have passed, and it's kind of a race to see, like, is Toriko gonna regenerate his arm first, or is Kamasu gonna create the century soup first? That was kind of like the theme at the end of it. So my chapter question for you, though, brothers and sisters, is What are your thoughts on Torico and obviously this regeneration seed, and obviously his gourmet cells just being like, just next level or just that much better, that he's already kind of, I mean, if within a few minutes or a few seconds he went and already sprouted a bud, and that normally takes a year, I can only assume that the healing process for him is going to be that much quicker. But what are your thoughts on the regeneration seed? Obviously the explanation of it, and then of course Toriko and his cells just really kind of working hand in hand and going with it. Leave your answer to that question, convoluted as it was, in the comments down below. Feel free to hit the thumbs up, the like button if you should think that I deserve it, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. We will look forward to catching all of you in the next one, Nation.
Remember to follow me on my other channels and Twitter and Facebook and Instagram too.